So I always get really excited for Stephen Pruitt. And I will tell you, there were several times that I had to follow him on stage, and I thought, oh, I never want to do that again because he's just so good. But he has such a passion and energy. And he's very humble. He just tells you like it is. But it's just always an honor and a privilege to have him here with us today. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Stephen.
So, it is so great to be here. Normally I start with the joke of pretending I'm on mute, but clearly that won't work this time. I am so glad to be here. I'm always so happy to be part of this conference and to be a part of this organization. I'm going to take a little bit different tact on my presentation today than what you're going to see in a lot of other places. I want to actually go specifically to talking about a significant issue that we as a profession are going to have to deal with. Let me just start by saying, when I talk about STEM today, I want to be crystal clear about what I'm talking about. STEM is, we tend to very much think about STEM in a traditional way. I have 2 degrees in chemistry. People would definitely say I'm a STEM guy, certainly when we think about the astronauts and thinking about going to the moon. But here's the reality of what we have to face, and that is that STEM can't be looked at the way it always has been looked at in the past because of what's coming in our future. By 2030, we're going to see an incredible amount of automation and artificial intelligence that's taking over the workforce. It's not going to be a thing where our workforce is going to actually have jobs replaced as much as they're going to have there's going to be more jobs, but in a different way. So like when you saw the video up there a few minutes ago, there was a lot of things going on in that video that you need to understand that go well beyond the engineers and the astronauts and the physicists, and actually more in the areas of career and technical education, advanced manufacturing, coding. There's a tremendous amount of work. I mean, my wife and I were in Oregon not too long ago, and she ordered a cup of coffee from a little iPad thing, and a robot made her coffee and handed it to her and said, have a good day, Cecilia, something like that. And we never saw anybody, except in the very, very back, there were some technicians. And that's kind of the world we're headed to. They're testing driverless tractor trailers out in New Mexico. There are restaurants in Atlanta right now that are serving using robots. A pizza place has found that their robots can make roughly 200 pizzas in an hour versus a human. And so it's a pretty big difference. So when I talk about it, I want you to understand that I'm talking about STEM in a much larger, much bigger way. Again, I usually start off with some jokes, but given that I gave the biggest joke in just trying to get on stage, I'm going to zip right past these because, we all remember what it was like before Zoom. For a while, teachers got really, it was amazing how fast the parents thought, hey, teachers are awesome because I don't want these kids at home. So we kind of became superheroes. And, we even, kind of helped Thor attack the dark world. But then kind of, unfortunately, things started getting back to where they were, and we kind of started to feel like we were floating out in space quite a bit. And then we just wanted to be on Zoom Beach, Zoom where, and, figure out a place to be. But here's the deal. And this is, my talk today is really more focused on our teachers, okay? So I want you to take a second for me, and I'm gonna count to 10, okay? And I want you, in your mind, to think about why you became a teacher. because when I show you what I'm going to show you, it's going to get a little depressing for a while. Okay? So, starting now, I want you to think about why you became a teacher. Go. Okay. Now, here's the second thing I'm going to ask you to do. Second thing I'm going to ask you to do is one of the things that we have seen coming out of COVID has been that our students, it's been hard for them to reintegrate into the classroom. Y'all have seen that in your classes, right? Where kids are actually having a harder time socializing and getting back and being engaged. Let me tell you, we're also hearing that from college students, where professors are saying they're just sitting there glassy-eyed. I've had the chance to speak at several conferences at this point, and frankly, I'm seeing it from adults when I'm talking. Now, I think going forward, I'm going to make sure I fall coming up on stage, because that does get you a little bit more awake. But here's what I want you to do, and this is how I'm going to know if you're paying attention to me or not. Okay? At times during my talk, I'm going to say something like, I need, and I want you to say, to teach. Okay, you ready? We're going to try it. I need. Okay, and then sometimes I'm going to say, students need, and you're going to say, me. Students need. That was a little weak. We're going to try that again in a minute. But here's the reality. Every child deserves a great teacher, but teacher shortages are hurting our economy, and they hurt education as a whole. So I want to share a little bit with you about where we're going. This is going to be the kind of depressing part. When we look at why we are having our teacher shortages, it comes down to quantity, quality, and diversity. Now, some of you may be thinking, we're at a STEM conference. Why in the world is this guy talking about teacher shortages? Well, let me tell you. It's been 10 years since the framework for K-12 science education was released. It's been 8 since we finished the NGSS. I've seen some pretty great instruction. When I was commissioner in Kentucky, one of the requirements was you had to take me to a non-tested science class, which sometimes gave superintendents a little bit of a nervous time because they didn't always have them. And part of that was because of what we're talking about right now. Well, here's the deal. How many of you have heard that we have a big nursing shortage in the country? Raise your hand. Most of us, right? Do you know that nursing programs are closing down? And you're like, well, wait, how can they be closing down if we have a shortage? Well, because everything's in a cycle. If we don't have enough nurses, we don't have enough nurses to eventually become instructors to train the next generation. So we're actually starting to see nursing programs around the South especially start to close because they don't have the teachers to teach new nurses. Well, this shortage was predicted years ago. Probably very analogous to where we are with educators right now. So we've got to think about the proportion of teachers that are entering and exiting in terms of quantity. We've got to think about how well prepared novice teachers are. Do you know that most teachers are not leaving because of their salary? They're leaving because they don't feel they're prepared for their job. Because see, when people go into this world, they don't go into this world because they want to make big bucks. They go in because I need. Okay, y'all are, that sucks. My fall was better than that. Okay, I sacrificed my body. You can at least give me a better one. Come on now. Because as a teacher, I need. There you go. And we have to think about diversity. Most of our students do not look like most of our teachers. I cannot be what I cannot see. So when you think about quantity, you look at the fact that 54% of parents say they would not like their child to become a teacher. In 2022, 86% said they were currently finding it more difficult to hire new teachers than ever before. And when you look at why this is true, and they did a study that found that 50% of high school students said they would be somewhat, moderately, or definitely interested in becoming a teacher, but the top reasons that they did not want to, or the top reasons they cited for why they ultimately decided not to do it, include low pay, lack of career advancement, lack of flexibility, and lack of prestige and respect. Now, I'm going to say something here that some of you aren't going to like. But on that last one, lack of prestige and respect, y'all, that starts with us as the profession. Yes, we want our legislators, we want our policymakers, we want our parents to respect us. But folks, as long as we do things that disrespect the profession, we will not get the lack of, we will continue with the lack of prestige. That starts at home. Look at the people who talk about exiting. The average number of turnover rate in SREB states. Now, for those of you who don't know, SREB is an interstate compact. We started in Delaware. Yes, we consider Delaware part of the South. You cannot buy sweet tea in the restaurants there, but we love them anyway. But from Delaware down to Florida, back over to Texas, and back up through Arkansas, Kentucky. So the average turnover is about 10%. The average turnover in states among teachers with less than 5 years is 45%. Teachers who plan to leave their jobs, according to a recent study, is about 50%. And chief talent officers who say resignations are higher now than in previous years are 76%. You cannot find very many places where there are not many jobs opened and having a hard time filling them. If I were, all the superintendents that are in the room right now, but if I were to ask you to raise your hand to say how many of you have a lot of job openings, the displacement of air from you raising your hand would probably make me fall again. Teacher licensure is another issue. We have 4.3% that are completely uncertified or emergency certified, 10% out of field, and in some of our states, we're seeing uncertified or inexperienced as high as 30% of their teaching force. In math, we see all 16 states in the southern region actually have math teacher shortages. I'll let y'all take a picture since y'all are doing it. Glad that the pic is pointed this way. I hope anybody that took a picture of me when I came up the stairs, you can text that to me, but please don't tweet that. It's always funny to me that when I'm speaking and people do take a picture of me to tweet it, it's always with this weird, yeah, that one would have been a lot worse. Mainly because my wife monitors Twitter whenever I'm speaking, and oh my God, would I have, I'm not telling her. No. In science, we have 15 states with shortages. In career and technical education, 11 of our states have shortages. Those three I wanted to point out specifically because those are the ones that are really tied to STEM, integrated STEM. Now, here's the reality. We have shortages in special ed. We have shortages in ELL. We have shortages in English language arts. And y'all, for the first time, we're actually seeing shortages in elementary education. Who would have ever thought that that was going to happen? But all of these things, if we want to really have integrated STEM, because I can tell you, we can hand people stuff to do. We can hand them, you can go and play with things and you can go play with models. Rich learning, though, comes from a teacher who knows their trade and cares about their kids. Because as a teacher, I need, all right, we're going to have to figure this out. And you know, here's the bad thing. I'm going to call y'all out because I am a former high school teacher. You know where it's coming from on this side? So all the elementary teachers are like, I need to teach. All the high school people are like. Because I know, because I was a high school teacher. I sat in the back of the faculty meeting too. I was the original creator of the faculty meeting bingo game. All right, but we need you to get a little bit more fired up here. Teacher preparation, we're seeing 50% fewer teachers being prepared every year. We only had in the SREB region 54,143 people completed teacher prep programs in 2020. Now, I know that we have a tendency to think about traditional programs and how bad those alternate programs are, but I'm going to tell you, full disclosure, I was one of those people at one time. And then I started seeing the benefits of other things. You're going to hear, and I want to strongly endorse you to go and listen to the Kentucky folks talk about the teacher prep program that they have that's run out of the Kentucky Department of Education. Personally, I think the person who was commissioner at that time helped bring that in was brilliant, but not because of the idea, but mainly because of Jody, who you'll get to hear from. But the thing is, I live with two of those folks now. Well, not one of them because he moved out, but my wife, who after being a pharmacist for 28 years, decided to go be a high school physics teacher. And she went through an alternative program. And my son, who got a degree and thought he was going to go to work in zoos, he decided he could use all of his animals in his classroom. So he has about 30 reptiles that he uses in his classroom all the time. Yeah, it's going to take a special person to be his significant other. But those alternative programs can also make a lot of difference, because here's one of the things that we're finding. And I think you'll hear this, I don't want to steal any of your thunder, but I'm going to say this part. I think one of the things that you'll hear from Kentucky is when you see a year-long residency where you're actually getting in-time support, it actually is making more difference because there's something for people to hang their hat on. They actually, you know, when you're doing your teacher prep and you're in college and you think you know what education's like versus when you walk into the class. I mean, I remember they handed me my keys to my classroom at Sandy Creek High School in 1991, and I was like, I am a teacher. Yeah, I have arrived. And then that bell rang, and I went, oh, crap. I'm a teacher. What am I going to do? Teacher experience, the percent of teaching in the workforce with less than 3 years experience. Almost 16% of teachers in the region are in their first 2 years. Diversity continues to be a problem. We only had 22% of teachers of color, despite in the South having 59% of students being people of color. If you can't see it, you can't be it. So why in the world would we think that students of color would want to become a teacher if they never see people that look like them standing in front of the classroom? So when we think about the challenge, it's one of distribution, because everybody wants to go to the suburb that's paying a lot. Rural. Did you know that we have more rural students in this country than we do in the top 11 biggest urban districts? People don't think about that. But you know what? There's not a club in rural Georgia. And there's barely a cell tower sometimes. So we've got to rethink how we're doing that. We've got to be more innovative. And of course, that means that we have a big equity issue. So why do we have these shortages? Well, teacher stress. Pre-pandemic, we had the stress. Imagine what it's like now. The number increased. 3 in 4 teachers are reporting high levels of daily stress compared to 40% of other working adults. Sustaining teaching. We're working more hours. More teachers have a second job than ever before. And the demands have just simply gotten greater on our teachers. Compensation. We have a compensation dashboard where we're looking at take-home pay for teachers across our region. Year one, they're taking home $29,000. Do you know that actually qualifies you for most of the federal government subsidies? In year 35, we have, as an average, people are they're bringing home almost $46,000. Teacher compensation, they just don't feel like they're fairly paid, and they're not. And Lord knows nobody wants to do a calculation of a hourly rate, because we'd all really get depressed. But here's the thing, it happens in college too. We're seeing where most of the college faculty is now part-time. They're not even full-time anymore. And that's going both 4-year and 2-year. We also see where we're not putting our resources completely where we need to. Look down there on the bottom right, computer science. The need way outpaces the actual supply of our teachers. So how are we going to get to integrated STEM if we don't have the teachers to do it? Now here's the scary part. In our SRAB states, we did a projection where what would happen by 2030 if nothing changes. Right now, we have 1.3 million teachers serving 19.4 million students. By 2030, we're going to have 1.8 million teachers serving 27.3 million students, and only a small margin of increase in teachers of color. In our 1920 data, we're seeing where the average turnover is 10%, with average new teacher turnover of less than 45%, but if that remains unchanged by the time we get to 2030, we're going to be seeing more than half of our teachers leave the workforce within 5 years. And again, we're going to continue to see increases in the inexperienced teacher that are providing that. Also, this may be the scariest part for me, is 54,000, like I said earlier, completed the teacher prep programs, but if we continue at this pace, only 31,000, almost 31 and a half, will actually complete those enrollment. So we got to do something different, because we see when we look at industry needs, look at all those negative numbers. We don't have the numbers to meet those needs. So how do we solve it? Well, we got to rethink our pathways and preparation. We have to think about how we do our professional supports. We have to rethink licensure. And yes, we have to rethink compensation. Now, here's the thing. It's a comprehensive approach. It can't be one of those. Doing any one of those nibbles around the edge. There's got to be a stronger thinking point around how do we look at entry points that share high standards? Because the temptation when you have fewer teachers is let's lower the standards. Well, that always worked out great for everybody. I think we got to rethink that and find those people that as teachers they need. There you go. Now you one person. There you go, Al Byers. Because they need, because our students need. We got to figure out how to get back to that part. Licensures, we got to think about how to scaffold better. Professional supports, people don't feel like they're prepared for the job. And compensation speaks for itself. But compensation isn't just pay, it's also your health benefits. It's your retirement. So thinking about all of those things are really important. Thinking about actually a career continuum for teachers. Stop making teachers go be principals because they need to do that to provide for their families, and let them stay in the classroom. Because students need me. They need teachers who care about them in the classroom. So we have some states that have some promising programs out there. I'm not going to go into them for time's sake, but I think we're going to share the presentation at some point, right? So you can go take a look at those. But here's what I want to end with. And I think I may even be ending a little early. Am I right? I can't remember what time I'm actually supposed to end. Well, that's what I was going to say, is we could do a little Q&A. But here's what I'd like to start moving back us to. We have a need for our workforce. We have a need for our economy. All those things are true, and we've got to keep that as a perspective. But we also have to figure out, as a profession, how to draw more people into this. We can't keep doing the damage to our own profession by saying things like, I'm just a teacher. That's demeaning to the whole profession. Or by saying, oh, you don't want to do this job. It's hard. Well, heck yeah, it's hard. You should be proud of the fact it's hard. See, we got to somehow figure out how to make the teaching profession more like a Hallmark movie than a Lifetime movie. Do you know what the difference is? A Hallmark movie teaches you how to fall in love. A Lifetime movie teaches you how to kill them. We need to be a little bit more Hallmark. To fall in love with the greatest and most noble profession of education. We could give people stuff to do. We could have kids go play. We could have them go out and have fun. Is it really going to lead to an integrated STEM mentality? And understand, integrated STEM, and I know you know this or you wouldn't be at this conference. It's not simply about, just problem solving a thing in front of you. It's about a way of thinking. Imagine what our country would look like if we all had ways of thinking that exceeded and was beyond the mundane. I mean, we could do some pretty incredible stuff. Like, I'm guessing if we had everybody that had a STEM frame of mind, when you flew down here and they gave you the peanuts that said, warning, it contains peanuts, you could have figured that out. I'm just guessing. Now, I flew here from Atlanta. They told me my seat was a flotation device. I thought, where are you going? That I'm going to need a flotation device between here and Atlanta. Maybe we could get rid of these crazy warning labels, right? Big thing goes in front of your windshield. Take down before driving. Thank goodness somebody put that up there. Somebody just driving along. They're cool. They're killing people, but they're cool. And then my favorite being the tube of preparation H. You know what it says on the tube of preparation H? Do not eat. Y'all, and you know it's because somebody wrote a letter. It said, Dear Preparation H, I've eaten a whole tube and I still have those hemorrhoids. My mouth is so small, I can't even eat a jelly bean. But I can whistle really well. I mean, STEM is more, it's a way of thinking about the world. It's a way of walking and being in the pure wonder of living on this earth and looking into the skies of where we can go. Now, I'm going to ask you to go back to what I had you start with a minute ago, or a little while ago, of what made you become a teacher. Okay? Now, right now, I want everybody in here to close your eyes for a second. Now, don't worry, I'm not doing an altar call or anything, but I do want you to do this for me. Close your eyes for a second. You thought about what made you become a teacher. Now, what I want you to think about is what kept you being a teacher. For me, there was a kid named Brandy. Sent me a Facebook message 10 years after I had her in class. That after I woke her up every morning at 10 o'clock, because she wanted to sleep in my second period physical science class because I knew she had been out doing things she shouldn't have been doing the night before. Sent me a note that said, Coach Pruitt, I just want you to know that I'm getting my bachelor's in nursing today, and it was because you wouldn't let me sleep. Or because of a kid that walks up to you at the grocery store and says, hey, you remember me? And you go, no. You're a lot different than what you were when I taught you. And they start to describe you. You can not just see them, but you see exactly where they sat in your classroom. Or you see a kid named Ryan who finished his cross-country race. He was 6'4", 230, had no business running, but he said, I have nowhere else I fit. And as he crosses that finish line the last time, he picks you up in a bear hug and says, thank you for never giving up on me. So close your eyes, find those kids. And if right now your lip's not quivering a little bit, I don't think you're thinking hard enough. Those kids are why we do what we do. And yes, we're in a hard place. But what we have to figure out how to do for our colleagues is help them remember. Remember why we do this job. Remember who we do it for. Because students need. Students need. Students need. Students need. We literally stand between those that I can and I can't, those between impossible and impossible. That's who we are. We are teachers. And if we're going to be successful with integrated STEM, it starts right here in this room. Thank you for all you do and for all the work that you do on behalf of the kids of this country and on behalf of helping them understand the importance of STEM to their careers and to their futures.
Anyone who has any questions, please raise your hands and I'll be right there. No one has any questions for Stephen?
I figured somebody'd say somebody gonna help him down off the stage.
Yeah, Kelly's doing that now.
The funny thing is, I was reaching a hand up to help Kelly off. She should have been helping me up. She even had on heels.
There we go. Excuse me.
Good morning. My name is Tammy and I'm a principal in Washington Heights, Harbor Heights Middle School. How do we encourage teachers to get involved, or at least potential teachers to get involved under the current political climate? Because now we see that teachers are being attacked a lot for what they teach, what they could teach, what they shouldn't teach.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's one of the biggest challenges I think we have. I work for an organization that we are, by definition and by every bylaw we have, we are nonpartisan. And I know people tend to eye roll when you hear that, but it's true. In fact, it's a really weird place to be because we actually just had our board meeting and we see the very polar differences that sit in state houses sitting with one another talking about educational issues. I literally at our last meeting saw a table that they were sitting DR around a table. So on the one side, I would say that my hope is, forever hope, that we will someday get back to the business of education, period. As far as how to help teachers do that, I think that, and this is going to sound a little Hallmarkish, and I get that, but I do think that somehow we have to start reminding people about why they went into the business to start with. it is frustrating with all the stuff that goes on, with all the things you hear in the media. I mean, you know, my jokes with my Zoom backgrounds and stuff, it's true. I mean, for a few weeks there, man, people were talking about how awesome teachers were. Y'all remember that? Yes. In early 20, people were like, teachers are awesome, man. We get these kids back to the classroom. And then all of a sudden, we go way the other way and go, well, why are they not wanting to go back into the buildings? You know, they get 3 months off. I've never had 3 months off. Even when I was in the classroom, there was never 3 months off. So, the thing that I say a lot that is easier said than done, and I believe this with all my heart, but it's also one of those things that skeptical people are going to kind of roll their eyes at. And that is where, as teachers, we need to do a better job of preparing our teachers to be leaders. That's number one. And what I mean by that is, you can't just think teachers are going to naturally evolve into a leader in their building. You actually have to be very intentional about that. And as part of becoming that leader, it's helping them understand the political environment that they're in. I mean, you know, to quote Hamilton, you want to be in the room where it happens, right? Well, you know, you don't walk up to a legislator that you know that has a certain point of view and just basically punch them in the nose by telling them, you're an idiot, I believe this. Because guess what? You're not going to be invited into the room. So as part of teacher leadership, it's not just helping leadership in the building, it's also building a political acumen of understanding the real issues, understanding policy. So most of my day job is about policy. Do you know how many times all right, I'll tell you this. This will give you an example. I'm watching a legislative meeting, and one of the legislators picks up a book, it was this thick, and says, we have too many education regulations. We got to get rid of these. This is the education reg book. And I texted him and I said, you know that's the law book, right? It's not the regs. That's the law. That's the actual law that you passed. And he came back to his credit and said, I want to amend my previous statement. We need to relax some of these laws if we're going to let teachers do their job. I was like, okay, good. But there's so many people who think they know what a law says or think they know what a regulation says. A lot of times my job is simply sitting at a table with a bunch of people, correcting them on what their own state law says or what their own state regulation says. Being a teacher leader means that you start to understand what those policies and laws are intended to be and how they play out in the classroom and not what they think is playing out in the classroom. I mean, we're seeing it with some of the work we're doing in some of our states now where there's people that get upset about something that's going on and they have, all they've read is Twitter. And so somehow they got an idea about a whole initiative in 140 characters or less instead of actually reading the document. That's kind of a integrated STEM thing, isn't it? Where you actually do research before you make a claim, right? So I'm giving a really long answer to the question, but I do think that for us as a profession to be better as a profession, we need to understand how and when things are being done and then how it impacts us. And then how do we articulate that to the people that are making those decisions?
Thank you.
We have another comment here.
I'm Reed Aggins. I'm superintendent in Kentucky and was superintendent when Dr. Pruitt was our commissioner. And I just want to give him a shout out for the great job he did in Kentucky. Let's give him a big hand.
Thank you very much. We have a couple of really great Kentucky superintendents in the house too. And so it means a lot. I appreciate it.
We have another question.
And I will just tell you too, these two superintendents from Kentucky that are here, the only two I've seen are from rural Kentucky, and they have found ways to make sure that STEM gets into their classrooms. They have made sure Reed in particular has found a way to go from barely going month to month to having surplus, and gave the biggest teacher raise in the history of his county this past year. Yes, sir.
I'm Ken Hecht, National STEM Honor Society. I wanted to, your comments about the teachers exiting and what keeps teachers in, what gets them in. I wanted to know, I think we know the positives mainly with STEM people of project-based learning for the student. But can you talk a little bit about the positives of project-based learning as a part of a teacher's life, and how that might be some sort of a part of a solution to help more teachers be more interested, just as it helps students be more interested?
That's a great question. Now, first, before I answer that question, I'm going to give you a little chemistry lesson. You ready? Do y'all remember activation energy in chemistry? Obviously not. So, for a reaction to occur, here's what happens. You mix two substances, and this is what the graph looks like. The graph goes up in energy and then comes down. And energy is given off if it's an exothermic reaction. You're like, what does this have to do with that question? Well, here's what it is. Activation energy is energy that has to be put into a reaction for it to occur. At a certain point, that energy activates the reaction, and the reaction goes. Project-based learning has the same curve. When you start project-based learning, it's really hard at first. Things don't work. Kids get, the thing is, first of all, just to be clear, in your STEM classroom, if it's clean, you're not doing STEM. Okay? It needs to be dirty. If kids aren't washing their hands every day, you're not teaching science. Okay? You got to be doing stuff, right? But here's the problem. We want everything to be perfect, and we want it to work just like I saw when I went to the STEM Leadership Alliance meeting, and I saw so-and-so do that in front of my class. It's not going to work the first time. It may not work the second time. That's why you have 6 periods, so that one of them it'll work. Okay? I'm kidding, obviously. But the activation energy of project-based learning, what's hard about it is getting people past that initial energy that it's required. And so teachers go, I am working so hard, I'm having to do so much, and it's not doing what I want it to do, and it's not getting my kids what I want it to get. So what do? We give up. It's a lot easier for me to lecture, for me to put stuff on the board, for me to give worksheets. But worksheets don't grow dendrites. Project-based learning does. So what happens is we have to give enough support of teachers to get them over the activation energy hump, so that then all that energy can be released in the classroom. But what does that speak to? Support, which is one of the 4 areas I told you we have to do a better job in. So if you want to help teachers stay in the classroom and retain them, do things like project-based learning that gets them into the classroom, gets them loving what they're doing, gets them where they're seeing the benefit, but they're being supported while they're learning to do it. And then all of a sudden, teaching becomes a lot easier, because now I can see that this is the way it's supposed to work. We have this false narrative in education that we're supposed to be experts at everything. But my friend Carl Wyman, who was a Nobel Prize winner in physics and professor at the University of Colorado, did a study with teachers and found that there's a spectrum. On one end there's novice, on one end there's masters, and it is a sliding scale. Every time something new is created, it causes a teacher to slide back toward novice, and we need to give ourselves permission to do that. Project-based learning gets them over that hump and helps them stay closer to that master level. And I have seen studies about this. I couldn't recall one off the top of my head that have shown where teachers who are involved in project-based learning tend to stay in the classroom longer, and they have greater job satisfaction than when they're just in there teaching. Again, you'll probably hear Jody talk a little bit about that when she talks about their work in Kentucky.
Good afternoon. I am Dr. Maxine Kane from STEM Atlanta. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
I know, right? So you talked earlier about teachers needing to make sure, or the colleges and universities shifting the way they teach teachers. And so, in my experience, and I know we've talked about this as well, that a lot of the teachers are not comfortable in the classrooms. And so I know between now and 2030, like you mentioned earlier, that there's going to be an educational revolution, especially at the collegiate level, because we're talking to colleges and universities, university presidents, and they're having to do a major shift, right, relative to how they're teaching even the professors, how they're teaching the students, because the corporations today are just struggling. There's a severe war for talent, and the students are coming out of college not prepared. And so in my mind, I'm thinking that it is an entire ecosystem that needs to shift. So I'm curious to know, what is your thought around what you're expecting or anticipating that revolution looking like for the educational system?
So first of all, what you just said is the number one thing that's got to happen, is instead of thinking about systems, plural, of education, we have to start thinking about the education to workforce system. If you try, and when we had our meeting with our board last week, and just so you know who our board is, it's 16 governors, four appointees by each governor, one of which has to be a legislator, one of which has to be an educator. And we have a whole legislative advisory council of about 60. So my board meetings tend to run about 200 people. That's fun. So, but the big thing that we talk to them about is, if you try to make changes in K-12 or post-secondary or workforce, you're going to just be making basically little nibbles, and you might make a couple of shifts. But if you really want, and you know, not many people are going to do what Maryland did. Maryland took their whole system, threw it out, and recreated it. Kentucky did that with CARA back in the 90s. Okay? There's more to it than just fixing one part of the system. So here's the thing. You mentioned the term ecosystem. Now, it's one of those words that has picked up a lot of steam in D.C., you know, in which I always laugh, because I'm like, you know, something's going to eat something in an ecosystem. That's the whole point of an ecosystem. Something's going to get eaten. Well, in this case, it's actually pretty accurate, though, because by definition, every system that comes into contact with another system competes for resources, right? So if K-12, which is usually the biggest part of a state budget, and post-secondary are doing things separate with different priorities, and then you have workforce, which is outside the education realm altogether and usually sits over in the Department of Labor or Economics, you don't have a seamless system of education to workforce. Post-secondary also has to start to realize that one of the things they've got to do is start to realize that part of their job is for higher education. But a big part of their job is to get people jobs so they get out of their parents' basement, right? And so that's a big, big deal. But it's also a big, big shift, because that's not how post-secondary is traditionally thought. And then workforce, they don't even think about K-12 or post-secondary, because they're off doing their own thing. So if we really want to see that shift or that revolution you're talking about, you got to recognize that we have entered a fourth industrial revolution where now computers and robots learn with us and not from us, okay? We have to recognize that we have to start helping, or we have to think of in terms of a North Star of where we want our economy to go and our economy to be. And then we have to think, how do we align a K-12 post-secondary workforce system to reach that goal? Now, I'm not saying that we need to go in and reorganize all the agencies and all that stuff. Everybody keeps their identity, but they actually might, you know, need to work together to figure out how to make that shift. That, to me, is the only way we're going to see change. Because otherwise, I mean, people talk about the Mississippi Miracle, you know, where Mississippi led the nation in reading, in fourth grade reading in NAEP. The reason that worked is because they didn't just teach new teachers coming out of the classroom. They also required every practicing teacher to go through the same training It was a whole-scale change. So to me, it's a system, singular, not a system, plural.
All right, good day, everyone. So with an emphasis on just accessibility and STEM, my question to you is, what do you think are the most important things that many policymakers don't understand about teachers, schools, and students?
I only have 3 minutes to answer that question. Okay. Here's the biggest thing. I learned a long time ago when I went into policy that any sentence that starts with the word just should never be finished. This is what I mean. Well, just go do, don't even finish the sentence. And so I hear a lot of times where, policymakers and others will say, well, we'll just give them more money, or we'll just take more money away, or just give them more accountability, or just, no. The biggest thing they need to understand is what you do every day. And they need to understand it in 2 ways. One, and we, as teachers, we love to give the heartfelt stories. Those are important because it helps people connect. But you've got to understand, too, that a lot of policymakers have been hearing those heartfelt stories forever. So you also have to balance that with the practical realities of what you are doing to help them have a better economy in your state or in the country. I mean, to be honest with you, one of the biggest things when you're talking to policymakers is if you can't make teaching or specifically what you teach fit into the bigger system, they're not going to listen to you. As a former commissioner of education, I can tell you, I had people every day, I got hundreds of emails every day that would say, you need to do this. And it was always this thing. And it really just becomes noise. The people I was able to listen to were the people who could come to me and say, I think you should do this because of these 3 reasons. And the fourth reason is it will help increase scores, it will help whatever in the bigger picture. And so what legislators and policy makers need to understand is who you are as a teacher, what you do every day, which you can never do until they come visit your classroom for really more than 1 day, because it can't be just the dog and pony show. But also how you as a professional and how you as a leader and as an educator communicate to them what's important about what you do. And that's why I say, when we say things like, I'm just a teacher, when we say things, you don't show up to state board meetings or legislatures, in shorts and flip-flops. I mean, you got to remember, they're used to people wearing coats and ties every day. I don't like them. I mean, gosh, I avoid them like the plague, but they're not going to hear you if you don't come to them on their level. I could talk a lot more about that, but I won't, because I think I'm getting the notification. I'm seeing people walk down the aisle here to help me off the stage. But listen, I hope y'all have a great meeting. I really wish I could be here. Unfortunately, I've got to speak at another conference tomorrow in South Georgia, so I've got to go back and get on a plane and drive 4.5 hours tonight to get back down there. But thank you for all you do. Our kids need you, because students need. Have a
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. Let's give him a big round of applause. And thank you for taking the time. Be careful.
Okay, well, everybody will be very careful now. So, Stephen, thank you. And